Mira had been 7 years old the night her old life ended, and her hidden one began. She still remembered the smell of smoke and rain, the sound of a woman crying somewhere far off in the halls of Blackthorn Keep, and the trembling hands of an old healer named Old Rena, who pulled her into a small stone room and told her that from this night on, she must never speak her real name again. "You saw something tonight that no one else can know," Rena had whispered, pressing a cold hand to the girl's forehead. "If you love this kingdom, if you love your own life, you will forget the name your mother gave you. You are Mira now, only Mira. Do you understand?" The child had nodded, too frightened to ask questions, too young to understand the weight of what she was agreeing to. She did not know that a binding spell had been woven into that promise, a magic so old and so quiet that it would live inside her like a second heartbeat for the next 18 years, sealing away not just a name, but a truth the entire kingdom believed was buried in a small, unmarked grave. 18 years later, Mira moved through the kitchens of Blackthorn Keep with the same quiet grace she had learned as a child. Soft steps, downcast eyes, hands always busy so no one would look too closely at her face. She was 25 now, tall and slim, with dark hair she kept braided back, and eyes the color of storm clouds. The other servants liked her well enough, though they often said she seemed to be somewhere else, lost in thoughts she never shared. She liked it that way. Invisible was safe. That safety cracked the day the Alpha King arrived. Draven Ashwood came to Blackthorn Keep with 20 wolves at his back, and a reputation that traveled faster than his carriage. He ruled the northern territories with a steady, quiet strength that made even seasoned warriors lower their eyes. He was not cruel, the rumors said, but he was not soft either. He was the kind of alpha who noticed everything. Mira first saw him from across the courtyard, standing tall in a dark coat, his sharp gaze sweeping over the keep, like he was already memorizing every stone and shadow. She told herself to look away. She always looked away from nobility. It was safer to be forgotten. But that evening, during the welcoming feast, her carefully built world tilted. She had been carrying a tray of wine through the hall, weaving between tables, when she passed close to where King Draven sat. He turned his head sharply, as if she had called his name, though she had said nothing at all. His nostrils flared slightly, and for one strange moment, his dark eyes locked onto hers with a look of open confusion. Mira's heart slammed against her ribs. She ducked her head and hurried away, refilling cups with hands that trembled just slightly. She did not know that Draven possessed a rare gift passed down through his bloodline, the ability to sense the true name hidden beneath a person's scent, a kind of soul signature that could not be faked or hidden by ordinary magic. Most people's names matched what he sensed. Hers did not. Instead, he had caught the faintest whisper of another name entirely, one that flickered at the edges of his senses like a candle flame refusing to go out. He said nothing that night, but he did not stop watching her. Over the following days, Draven found reasons to linger near the kitchens. He asked the head steward about the girl who had served the wine that first evening. He learned her name was simply Mira, no family name attached, an orphan raised within the keep's walls since childhood. No one seemed to know more than that, and strangely, no one seemed curious enough to ask. That, more than anything, struck Draven as wrong. In his experience, people always had questions about strangers. The fact that no one here did told him something had been carefully arranged to keep it that way. He began to seek her out, not with demands or threats, but with small, quiet moments. He would find her in the garden when she went to gather herbs and ask simple questions about the keep, about the weather, about nothing important at all. Mira answered carefully, politely, never allowing herself more than a few words before finding an excuse to leave. But Draven was patient. He was used to hunting, and though he told himself this was only curiosity about the strange pull he felt near her, some part of him suspected it was becoming something more. "You never look at me for long," he said to her one afternoon, as she knelt by a bed of herbs near the kitchen door. "Most people can't help staring at a king. You seem to be trying very hard not to." Mira kept her eyes on the plants in front of her. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. I was taught not to draw attention." "Taught by whom?" She hesitated only a second too long. "The keep has its own customs." Draven crouched beside her, closer than court manners allowed, and she froze. "Your scent is strange to me," he said quietly. "Not unpleasant, just unfinished. As if there's a name underneath the one you're using, one that doesn't fit right." He watched her carefully. "Do you know what I mean?" Color drained from Mira's face. For a moment, the old fear from childhood rushed back, sharp and cold, the memory of Rena's warning ringing in her ears. "Never speak your real name again. If you love this kingdom, if you love your own life." "I don't understand what you mean, my lord," she said, standing quickly and gathering her basket. "If that will be all, I have duties to attend to." She did not wait for his response before hurrying away, leaving Draven crouched in the garden, staring after her with a troubled expression. He was no closer to answers, but he was now certain of one thing. There was a secret buried inside that quiet, careful young woman, and it was older and heavier than anything a simple servant girl should carry. That night, Mira could not sleep. She lay awake in her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling, her heart aching with an old, familiar loneliness. She had spent her whole life being no one so that someone else could remain safe. Someone she had never even properly known, a stranger whose survival she had sworn to protect before she was old enough to understand what such a promise cost. She thought of old Rena, long since passed, and the weight of the vow that still lived somewhere deep inside her, humming faintly whenever anyone looked at her too closely. She had never told a single soul the truth in 18 years. She was not about to break now, not even for a king with eyes that seemed to see straight through her defenses. But she had not expected the danger that followed close behind him. 3 days later, whispers began moving through the keep, rumors of strangers spotted near the outer walls, wolves who did not belong to any of the visiting packs. Draven's own guards reported unfamiliar scents near the eastern gate, faint traces of a pack that had not been seen in the region for nearly 2 decades. The Draymore pack, once bitter rivals of the Blackthorn bloodline, the same pack that had hunted a cursed newborn heir to extinction so many years ago. Mira heard the name Draymore spoken in passing by 2 guards near the kitchen door, and her whole body went cold. She nearly dropped the tray she was carrying. She knew that name. She had heard it once before, in fragments, whispered by a dying healer on the worst night of her life. That evening, the great hall was full of light and music for the summit's closing feast. Nobles and wolves from a dozen territories gathered together in false harmony. Mira moved through the crowd as she always did, quiet and unseen, though her nerves were stretched thin as a bowstring. She noticed him before anyone else did, a man near the far doors, his eyes scanning the crowd with too much focus, his stance too still for someone simply enjoying the celebration. When his gaze landed on her and did not move away, ice ran down her spine. He knew. Somehow, after all these years, he knew. Everything happened quickly after that. The stranger moved through the crowd with sudden purpose, shoving aside a noblewoman as he made his way toward Mira. Someone screamed. Chaos broke out as wolves throughout the hall shifted into readiness, sensing the danger before most humans even understood what was happening. Mira turned to run, but the man was faster, closing the distance in a heartbeat, his hand reaching for her wrist. She twisted away, and in the panic and noise, some desperate, buried instinct rose up inside her. The same instinct that had let her survive as a frightened child, hidden away from the world. She did not think. She acted. She spun and struck him with the heavy tray still in her hands, buying herself a single second to escape into the crowd. But he recovered fast, snarling, already shifting the edges of his form into something far more dangerous. Then Draven was there. He moved like a storm breaking, placing himself between Mira and the attacker without hesitation. His voice, when it came, was low and commanding, the kind of voice that made even hardened warriors take a step back. "Touch her again, and it will be the last thing you ever do." The stranger snarled something about a debt owed to the Draymore pack, about a secret that should have died 18 years ago, about an heir who was never supposed to survive her first winter. The words rang through the hall, and silence spread outward like ripples on water. Mira felt the binding spell inside her strain and shudder, weakened by the truth spoken aloud in front of so many witnesses. She pressed a hand to her chest, gasping, as if something ancient and heavy was finally cracking open after 18 long years. Draven fought the attacker only long enough to disarm him, his guards closing in swiftly to restrain the intruder before real harm was done. When it was over, he turned back to Mira, his chest still heaving from the fight, his eyes searching her face with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Tell me," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "Tell me the truth. I already know there is one." Mira looked around at the hall full of watching faces, at the guards holding the snarling stranger, at the king standing before her with blood on his knuckles, and something like hope in his eyes. She thought of Rena's warning, of a promise made when she was too young to understand its weight. But she was not a child anymore, and the secret had almost gotten her killed tonight, hiding in the dark instead of standing in the light where it might finally be protected properly. "My name," she whispered, her voice shaking, "is not Mira." The words seemed to break something loose inside her chest, a warmth spreading outward as the old binding spell finally released its hold, no longer needed now that the truth was spoken aloud by her own will instead of stolen by force. "My name is Alira," she said, louder this time, steadier. "I am the heir of Blackthorn, hidden the night I was born, because a curse marked me for death, and enemies wanted to finish what the curse began. I have carried that secret every day since I was 7 years old." Gasps spread through the hall. Somewhere, an older noblewoman pressed a hand to her mouth, recognizing perhaps some echo of a face she had not seen since the heir's supposed death so long ago. Draven did not look surprised. If anything, something in his expression settled, like a puzzle finally completing itself. He stepped closer, ignoring the murmuring crowd around them, and took her trembling hand in his. "Alira," he said softly, testing the name like something precious. "That is the name I sensed all along. The one that never quite matched the mask you wore." "I was afraid," she admitted, tears finally slipping free. "Afraid of what would happen if anyone knew." "You are not alone in that fear anymore," Draven said, his voice carrying easily through the quiet hall. "As Alpha King, I claim protection over Alira of Blackthorn, true heir to this house, under my authority and the strength of my pack. Any who move against her, move against me." The declaration rippled through the room, a promise as binding as any old spell, but chosen freely, spoken with love instead of fear. The Draymore intruder was dragged away in chains, his threats fading into the night, while whispers of wonder and celebration slowly replaced the earlier panic. Alira stood at the center of it all, no longer hidden, no longer nameless, her hand held firmly in Draven's. For the first time in 18 years, she did not feel the urge to look away or disappear into the shadows. She felt, instead, something she had almost forgotten how to recognize: safety, real and solid, standing beside a king who had seen through every disguise she wore and had chosen to protect the truth beneath it rather than fear it. Later that night, as the hall slowly emptied and the excitement settled into quiet relief, Draven found her standing alone by a window, watching the stars above the keep she had spent her whole life hiding within. "It is strange," she said softly, without turning. 18 years of silence, and it took only one evening to undo it all. "Not undone," Draven said, coming to stand beside her, finally allowed to breathe. "There is a difference." She glanced at him then, a small, tired smile finally breaking through the exhaustion and fear of the night. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, taking her hand once more, "you get to decide who Alira becomes, instead of hiding who she always was." Outside, the stars shone steady over Blackthorn Keep, witnesses to a secret finally set free, not stolen, not forced, but chosen, spoken aloud by a woman who had learned, at last, that the truth she had guarded so carefully deserved more than a lifetime spent in shadows. It deserved to be protected in the light, by someone strong enough to stand beside her rather than simply keep her hidden. And for the first time since she was 7 years old, Alira of Blackthorn slept without fear of her own name.